So I only thought it would be appropriate that we title this week's live stream Tobe's Homecoming.
Okay.
It is Tobe's homecoming. So as some of you know, last week last week we did a special show Monday to make up for the fact that we had missed the previous show. And
My
then Tobe wandered off into the woods for an adventure that he will share with us later. But out of a sense of obligation and duty, I felt it was my responsibility to hop on the live stream for, I told myself, just do it for 5 minutes, do a quick hi, this is what's going on, see you next week. And it was like that scene in Goonies when the Fratelli brothers have Chunk's hand in the blender and he just starts talking. I was just
oh,
blah 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 blah. I just kept rattling on and on. But here's what it really was, Tobe. It wasn't me just rambling trying to monopolize the live stream since I had it to myself. I was in a COVID induced stupor and I just hadn't tested positive yet. I had been pushing back in denial. And I do think if you go back to last week and if you really focus on me, you will see the sweat pouring off of me where
oh, I got to see this now.
I was trying to convince myself it's just the lights. It's just the pressure of the A Flash of Beauty live
Sure,
stream.
the world.
But God bless you. We're glad you're back. That was not easy. I floundered for about 20 minutes, and we are excited for everything you have come back to share with
I
us.
saw a little bit of this live being executed because we were lucky enough to have Starlink up there, and it was just a touch away. But we'll talk about why I didn't jump on with you. Had there not been a major event, I probably would have. But I'm glad you recovered. Um, these lives, they're very difficult, folks. And so for Jill to hop on there by herself, it really points to, the fact that she's just a Helen of Troy of her own, making. So thank you for at least attempting to do it without me.
Well, but you know what? I'll be honest. Like I said, I was planning to get in, say, hey, we're not doing anything. See you next week. And then I had the chat open on my phone. I was like, oh, hi. And I wanted to, then I was like, oh, people I know are in the chat. Now I want to keep talking. And then it was like, these live streams are not enjoyable. I was like,
And
oh.
then the fever kicked in, yeah.
The sweat.
Well, you can
Yeah.
say some crazy stuff on NyQuil, let alone when you have a fever. So I can only imagine what might have come out had you stayed on for another 30. It could have got crazy.
It could have been fun. I don't know.
Yes, yes, it could
We'll
have been
find out
really.
next time. Usually I like
Yeah,
have a glass of wine, and that's probably
right,
keeping me subdued so I don't go off the rails.
right.
But like I said, I'm so happy to have you to interact with again and to hear your adventures.
Oh
But
my
bef-
goodness.
and I
Go ahead.
know you have a lot to share, but I think we have to do. There's some things that need to be addressed first and foremost on a really serious note. Uh, one of our one of our friends, one of our colleagues, and someone we hold in high esteem really needs our help right now. Tobe, can you share with everyone about what was going on with Marcia and what she's facing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was tough to get a hold of anybody while we were in the woods. This was all kind of unfolding at the same time. So, as you know, there was a giant hurricane that swept through North Carolina, through Asheville, North Carolina. I think that's kind of like in the heart, and really close to where Marcia K. Moore moved in, up near the Mount Pisgah National Forest. Um, if you've seen some of the news footage, then you oops, there's a little bit of something going on there. If you've seen some of the news footage as far as what's happening, as far as the damage, as far as missing people, it's unlike Katrina. I think Brett just put up a little ditty on Facebook as far as the overall breadth of this hurricane and the power of the hurricane. It's twice as big as Katrina, and it shows. So Marcia, God bless her little heart, moved out from Bellingham, Washington, to North Carolina about a year ago, and had just set up shop. And anyway, her studio got a little bit ravaged by some of this and destroyed some of her artwork and got into the subflooring. And so there's some studio damage. So there is a way for you to help out a friend of the show, a friend in need, and we actually have some friends on social media that are headed out that way to help people in general in North Carolina with supplies, because it's very difficult to get supplies out in general just based upon the amount of timber. The number one thing that people need out there besides cash, and we'll talk about how you can do that in the case of Marcia, is they need supplies for cutting. They don't have chains for their
Mm-hmm.
chainsaws. They don't have any of the tools and the equipment to cut their way out to civilization. So literally people, if they have helicopters, they're jumping in their own private helicopters and basically going in recon style against FEMA's orders to not do so and dropping off supplies. So our way of being able to help right now is through a link, which is a GoFundMe link to help out Marcia in general. I don't know if you can drop that in or if you already have, Brett, but it's in your chat. And then you can just copy and paste it and share it on social media. I think Marcia's goal is to raise $10,000 to cover the damage of the flooding that was done to her brand new studio.
For Tire
And
Squatch. She's been, for those of you who didn't aren't aware of what Marcia is doing. So she's a very, prolific, very talented artist. But since she's moved to North Carolina, she's been repurposing and like upcycling uh, old bicycle tires and whatnot into these amazing sculptures, like life size, like Sasquatch sculptures, like stags, like what you would hang like on your wall from a hunting expedition and whatnot.
Mhm.
Bear, life size bears. It's just amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, picture like a taxidermist, but done with really cool mountain bike tires, and she has a whole technique to do it. And she did a life size Sasquatch, which survived this hurricane. Now that's crazy in itself because I believe it was outside when the hurricane came through, and there it just stood against these incredible winds, and now people are going by the Sasquatch and leaving little totems and gifts for it because it stood up to the crazy winds. So Marcia's not going anywhere. Like, she's totally embedded into this community and grateful for them supporting her along the way. But if you're able to support her, you can go to her GoFundMe site. Brett will put it in the description here. And if you go to Marcia K. Moore on Facebook, you can find out more about how she's doing along the way. She's just now able to get back online. And we had a couple words with her, and Marcia is always kind of like, in good spirits when dire straits. She's the kind of gal you would want next to you in dire straits because she
Yeah.
really is a glass half full kind of gal. So anyway, we're thinking of you, sis. I don't think you're going to be seeing this stream, but if anybody reaches out to her, just let her know that we're thinking of her. And if I hear anything, I'll update people.
And you know what? I'm not trying to sound like Jerry Lewis telethon here, but like every dollar counts, especially in a situation like this. And even just sharing, if you're unable to donate, even just sharing or posting the link, because if
Mm,
you never know how these things work out, how the link may find itself to someone who can
mhm,
donate.
mhm.
So any help would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, yeah. Marcia's already feeling the love here. She's nearing 2 grand in the last 24 hours, and she's trying to get it to 10 to cover the cost. A lot of time, insurance for flooding out that way is a little bit lackluster, if at all. So that's the position a lot of people are in. So that's what I know, and I'll keep an eye out and the ear to the ground.
Okay. Well, that yeah. So just and that goes for everyone. There's so many people who are being affected, and we are just sending a lot of just sending prayers. Really. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah. So just to with really awkwardness and very clumsily and clunky, I'm gonna shift gears now. Um, to our most latest interview that released this morning. If you've had a chance to watch it, you'll recognize our interviewee Shane Land, L. Shane Land, PhD, from the sequel A Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot. But this is he has a really unique take on the subject because not only was a sighting or being an encounter, I guess would be the better way to phrase it. Not only did it kind of shift his paradigm, he really expanded his outlook on the world and went back to school for it, so to speak. Tobe, you weren't there for the interview and you didn't really know Shane. What were your thoughts? What were your takeaways?
Well, he's an extremely well-spoken guy, and he's certainly earnest. I was under the impression initially that Shane was the proprietor of the Bigfoot Museum. That wasn't the case, though, right? You met him at the Bigfoot Museum as a backdrop, correct?
Correct. And this was an introduction made by Todd Neese.
Okay.
So Todd was just like, you need to talk to Shane Land.
Okay.
Talk to my buddy in Alaska. And
Okay.
it's like, when are we going? We just can't up and go to Alaska. And you put it out to the universe, and the universe responds. Brett got booked to film a commercial up in Anchorage. So off we went, and we arranged to meet him at the Bigfoot
Mhm.
Art Gallery, Rob Roy's gallery up in Palmer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an iconic image of him, profile image, face to face with a Sasquatch. There's a lot of I guess, innuendo with a guy looking into the face of something like that. The mystery of it all. And I forget who does those taxidermy busts, but a pretty talented guy. And so let's talk about what Shane had to say. Shane had what I would call a semi-brief encounter with a female friend of his when they saw a Sasquatch walking up the ridge line, and then did some I believe he had the mind to actually do a measurement with his thumb or his hand based upon the proximity of where this thing was approaching to gauge how big there was like a door to a mine, and he based how big the door was, and then was able to get a measurement of the trees, and came back with a measurement of like one third the size of a 26-foot tall tree, which is a mighty big thing. And it kind of, at that point, it changes your perspective of it being a bear or a human. And so this is kind of the world that Shane lived in for a while. And so he did what we all do is hop online, listen to podcasts, and go to conferences. But what I thought was interesting, and this may have very well happened at Beachwood if he's friends with Todd Neese, but he said he went to conferences and he ended up in the company of two fine gentlemen, Joe Hauser and Ron Moorhead, which, he could have met a lot of different individuals and they could have steered him in a whole different direction about what is possible here. But those two men in particular, I would imagine, kind of put him in a better spot so he could kind of jump the game. And so I think that's an important part of the story because often so much, after people have an initial sighting, they end up in the parameter of only the flesh and blood and known science. Although I think you can, like I said, you can have a cheat code if you can get to know someone like Joe Hauser in particular and Ron, and they can kind of walk you past the 20 years of wasted time and say, okay, now we're over here, right? We understand this is why we don't have a good video. This is why. So I thought that was really interesting that those were the first two guys that he met. And he didn't seem to be perplexed by their take on it. He did go on to say that even though these men were explaining it to be basically frequency and vibration as the excuse for how Sasquatch can do what they can do. He didn't say that he was happy to call these things metaphysical or paranormal. He wasn't really landing in that box with it all. I think he's in the box of unexplained science, which I still kind of think about those terms as far as what we're talking about here because it does smack of straight up magic, which I think exist on a level different than science. I think eventually there'll be things that we just can't answer through science itself. And so I don't know. For me, I'm in a category right now. I'm a little bit frustrated by what to do with that. And I didn't sense any frustration with him, though. I think he's just content with the mystery.
But I think he also enjoyed the journey as well. I mean, for someone to, I mean, it's I think it's one thing for you to experience something and kind of be open-minded enough to be like, "Oh, maybe there's more going on here than I understand."
Hmm.
And kind of doing some casual reading or going down a couple rabbit holes or podcasts here and there to, you know, I don't want to say cherry pick, but like immerse yourself in the conversation and the culture of what you're trying to, learn about.
Right.
But to be like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going all in. I need to understand the mystery and to go back to college basically.
Is that what he said? I don't remember. I mean, he did word it like that a little bit. And as a PhD, he probably sees it like that. But, he talks about science having a belief system of its own. It's a little bit how people explain atheism, too. And, in the same vein, there are no, scientists in a foxhole when the paranormal lets loose. It's all metaphysical at that point. Yet this metaphysical language, I think, is a little bit frustrating. So he goes down the philosophical rabbit hole of Aristotle and gets into the metaphysical side of it to look into the history of it. And there's a lot more to what I think he would have said had we given him time to talk on or off the record. But he considers the term woo to be a critic, be critical of research in general, which I could see that too. I mean, oftentimes it is a derogatory thing to say to people in general, especially if they're not on that team. But in the end, I mean, the phenomena is so great on its own that it kind of bypasses any criticism of a ridiculous word.
Yeah.
And I think we can use it to be kind of playful and lighthearted. I certainly do.
And I think that's the key. I think it comes down to what was so beautiful about sitting down with Shane was that curiosity and thirst for knowledge. It's
Hmm.
like he wasn't necessarily throwing out. He's like, yes, there is mainstream science, but we got to look beyond it,
Right.
and expand our minds and how we look at science. And that's completely true. And what I appreciated was that curiosity and that thirst for knowledge. And I think it's something we should all of us should be pursuing and not being limited by what one researcher or one person's experience dictate. And I think you hit the nail on the head just now. Being able to like have a sense of humor about it, be lighthearted, be you guys. I think what's the deal? Don't sweat the small stuff. Oh, it's all small stuff. Don't take yourself so seriously. I mean, enjoy the journey trying to understand what this all is. And I don't want to take away from, I know there's people who've had very traumatic encounters and whatnot, but I also think there's outside of that, if you look at the big picture, there's just so much we don't understand. And embrace that. Embrace that. I mean, not all encounters are negative. There's always going to be some outliers, as we know. And there's also going to be the outliers of the overly positive interactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to look at one of these hidden experiences as a gift, even if they're negative for the mere fact that we're not alone. That to me is a plus, that there's something else beyond the physical that has been promised to you at that point. And what an extremely isolating circumstance it would be. And this is why it gets into the philosophical really quickly. I mean, is this something, a question of science? Absolutely. But, the philosophy of is man alone is answered so quickly with the sighting because these things refuse to go away. They refuse to be answered by known science. And we'll talk more about Simeon Hine and our time with him in the mountains here. But once you hang around somebody that is absolutely well educated in these edges of science and what people would call pseudoscience, it turns out that the government and the DoD is probably more interested in this forbidden science than they are the known science that you utilize. There seems to be a classified version of understanding that is always kept outside of the public's public knowledge. And these are the things that I think we're just now beginning to understand, that we've all been shortchanged for quite some time by what is actually possible. And you see it more and more in these conferences, and certainly you get it with Shane as well, that he's starting to question what has been, delivered to him as far as possible. So we'll talk more about how that may work as far as Simeon Hine's concerned here in a second. The last thing I wanted to mention here, the last thing I wanted to mention, not necessarily you, but is before his sighting, him and his wife are on a survival tour of some kind in Sitka, Alaska, and they both have an experience while they're hiking. I think that's just them. I think it's just him and his wife away from the group that's learning these survival techniques. And he mentioned something so familiar, and certainly Psychofu, who's online, John Bull, was there the night that something similar happened to us. He describes wandering into a bowl. And when he moves his hand like this is an important part of the story to him. We moved into a bowl-shaped piece of geology in Sitka, Alaska, and as we walked into this valley or bowl-shaped area, we noticed that there was this apprehension and that we should probably be careful. There was this overwhelming sense of maybe we should turn around. And then he describes this feeling of dread as they push through this initial feeling. And then he describes something that is very reminiscent of what I experienced with John Bull, aka Psychofu, is the night that I described walking into what I had called a wall of jello, or this horizontal, like something out of
Yeah.
Stargate. Um,
Yeah.
and him and his wife pushed through this feeling to go into this wall and regretted it immediately. And then they describe going the other way because they can't handle the feeling. And he says, I think it's over 400 feet before they get rid of this feeling, that they're not being scanned or checked out, or this dread feeling is gone. These are that's such an important part of his Bigfoot experience that he didn't necessarily put in the Bigfoot category until after he heard about other people's experience, said, oh, shoot, you guys have that. Now, was that a cougar? Was that a serial killer? Was that a UFO? Was that EMF discharge? Well, we'll never know. But however, because of the proximity of the Bigfoot areas that we're in when these things happen, and things besides that, like eye shine and rock throwing, or eye glow and a very accurate rock throwing, and telepathy, these things all add up to the capability of what we're talking about here. So, it also points to the fact that going to these conferences means something, because he may have never known that experience, could have very well been Sasquatch activity had he not shown up or listened to these podcasts. So I thought that was really telling. And if I had more questions to ask him, I would definitely go back to this environmental experience that he had.
Agreed. And hey, I just want to jump in really quick. I just got a text from Rob Roy, who owns a Bigfoot Art Gallery.
Hmm.
Jeff Irvin.
Jeff does the
Jeff
Sasquatch head.
Irvin of Bigfoot Taxidermy. And you can go to
Yes.
bigfoottaxidermy.com. And he's the one who made Big George, is the name of the guy that Shane Land is sizing
Yeah.
up there. So,
Yeah, he does Yetis too.
yeah.
So
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
a Yeti,
Yeah. We were
yeah.
just there. We just saw the Yeti. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah.
Nice. So yeah, check it out. Shane Land just dropped today, and share it with other people, especially other PhDs. Like if you have a skeptic in your life that thinks, well, surely because of my, my background, I should know these things here, so therefore it can't exist. Well, it turns out PhDs have experiences too.
It's true.
Hmm.
It's true.
It's true.
So, Tobe, do you want to share with everyone what you were up to? I know if people are involved in Facebook and have seen your posts, they're probably like, I missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime. And I know Brett and I did because we were in
So
quarantine.
lame. So lame.
Or
Come
tortured.
on.
I
Um,
guess you could have come up there and coughed on everyone, but as a courtesy. But there's so much, you've been posting so much stuff online, and I have so many questions. Other than, I mean, you guys had a tornado touchdown. Is that correct? Is that how you kicked off the event?
oh my goodness. Yeah, well, there was a couple of cancellations. Our whole goal was to have camp semi set up in this remote area at 1,500 feet near the Hood Canal and have it ready to go. But it turns out that there's just going to be some wild weather that kept us from doing that. So we got as much of it as we could, thanks to Barb Shoop. Like our anchor of sanity was turned out to be Barb Shoop and my buddy Steve that came down, and they helped set up camp as far as like the pee potty tent, and we had to dig a latrine hole. Barb's got this whole science to like where to go to the bathroom, and it's way better than my coffee can. And so there she was, showing me you got to bring a fence pole digger and get around those rocks. And so we set up the potty tent. That was like we had to do that. And as soon as we got that set up, it all kind of came together. And there was just the two of them there at night, Steve and Barb. And I left down to the mountain because the next morning I had to get everybody down in little town of Hoodsport. And so I kept getting phone calls within that 24-hour period that people were going to arrive late, um, or they're going to arrive early. And so I just like, well, if you feel comfortable shooting a coordinates, go for it. I'll send you up the mountain. You can't really miss. If your Google map is on target, even if you get out of network, it will still send you up the blue line. You're cool. We just didn't want anybody to know where we were because of the fact we didn't want any other Bigfooters or jerks up there playing tricks on us. And so we kept it super secret squirrel and we sent people up. And so by Thursday the 26th, there was roughly, 20 or so of us up there. And then staggering through that night was supposed to be the other, 5 or 7 other people. And like I had a cousin that came in from Austin, Texas. He wanted to come. So I was waiting for him. But then we had the Starlink that we had to set up, which if you've never been in the remote territories without, if you've never been with Starlink, you need to go at least once with someone who has Starlink because it will change your outlook on what is possible as far as like feeling like you have the best of both worlds. Like obviously, Jill, the best of both worlds is room service and a king size bed. But Starlink is like a really good compromise. You can almost do Uber Eats with Starlink at this point. So that was huge. And I got to thank Steve Casas coming in from the little town of Morton, Washington to save the day with Starlink because we did have Starlink coming in about 4 months ago, but we had a cancellation. So we didn't know what we were going to do. All I knew is there was an intermittent signal near this super secret lake that we're calling Estes Lake. And the reason we call it Estes Lake is it's not its real name, but the way we were going to break apart things here, and I'll get back to the storm, is that there were two sections. One was for tech. That was the super secret lake below us called Estes Lake. And then there was the lake right across from our campsite, which is going to be like our drumming meditation, kind of like bare bones raw area where we could have like authentic, you know, person to person, person to phenomena, interaction. But the lower lake we were going to have is like our tech lake for night vision. Brett, if he came, drones, and the Estes method, which we'll talk about later. But before we could do any of this, the storm came in, and this was like a really bizarre storm. I remember at one point, Nancy Fry and I, shout out to Nancy Fry, the kind of the brains, and she really put the I guess she knew what she was doing because she put together large camps like this before, and she had it all wrapped up as far as how to conduct a food tent. And so as we're setting up everything, the strong wind came in and started blowing everything away, and you had to like brace for impact. You couldn't really prepare for these gusts of wind, and when they came in, they literally picked up these poor little pop-up tents, which are basically like little four-legged wind tunnels just waiting to be sucked up into the ether, and they just shot off into the wilderness. And like if you didn't have them, they were gone. And so I remember at one point I went down to this little lake to do this Estes method, and by the time I came back, everyone looked like they had just been through, hell. The tents went flying everywhere, and some of them got destroyed. I know we need to have a separate crowdfunding for destroyed tents and pop-ups. And I think Barb lost. Well, so the potty tent went flying through the air, but it didn't break.
Ew.
Luckily, nobody was doing their business. We were laughing about that. Like, what if you're just sitting there getting ready to go to town, and all of a sudden, all four walls shot up in the air? It's like that scene out of Jurassic Park. And
That would be
so
my luck.
that was, yeah.
Like, we just got to camp. Oh, I gotta use the
Yeah.
bathroom.
It was crazy. Like it was beautiful out, and then all of a sudden these 50-mile-an-hour gusts came. So Simeon and myself and we had Starlink, so we hopped on the weather. Like, what the hell's happening? Where did this come from? Because previously it was beautiful, and it said we're gonna have to deal with it till 1 in the morning. So we all braced for impact till 1 in the morning. Now, as we're bracing for impact, I'm thinking like people are going to leave. Like this is a total S show right now, and it's all on me to pull it together here. Trees are literally falling down in the woods to the point where people can smell the dug fir needles push through camp with like a giant thing of aroma pushing through camp of needles and ferns. And so safety first, we all kind of huddle together, and then things simmer down, and all of a sudden Barb looks up in the sky and says, "What's that?" And so we're all looking up there, and at first I'm thinking, well, that's probably the International Space Station. Like it reminded me of the brightness and the linear slide of the ISS. But I watched the footage a couple different times here. It appears as though this thing goes under the cloud cover, which doesn't make any sense, obviously, for anything that's in orbit. It needs more work done to it. We put it at the end of this little trailer that I made for people to look at regarding what we did up there. Dana Minium that night after the storm had passed. Now, maybe there's something to this, right? The fact that there was a storm and these strange lights. Dana Minium, after they had just lost a couple of pop-up tents, went back to bed in her SUV and described green and red lights coming up to her window. I believe they were green and red. Now, could they have been headlamps? No one really had a green headlamp that we could find. And she said that they were fairly close to her window. So we don't know what that was. But that was night one, was the storm of plenty. And so by 1 in the morning, I quit having a heart attack, and I was like, okay, this is like, we're gonna be okay now, right? Like, we prayed to Zeus to stop this crazy stuff, and by golly, it seemed to happen. So by 1 in the morning, we all got some sleep, and by 8 in the morning, it was absolutely lovely. The stars came out, and from so that would have been Thursday, the storm from hell, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, blue sky, no wind, and you know, really perfect weather-wise. But we had some things that we wanted to accomplish, and we were a day behind because Thursday we kind of had to scrub, and so Friday we just pushed all this stuff in. Now you and Brett were a part of the original itinerary, so we had some flexibility here.
Hmm.
Also, I should mention that we did have Dr. Simeon Hine on there to talk about remote viewing. We had Rich Germeau to talk about evidence collection, and then we had Barb Shoup as kind of our campfire moderator. But she was a heck of a lot more than that. But Larry and Inella, Larry Bazell and Inell from the Macaw Reservation showed up as well. Now, they have quite a following out there in the Macaw Reservation. They already have their thing going on near Lake Ozette. They get all sorts of people that come to their classes, and they teach all sorts of stuff. And they absolutely have Bigfoot stuff going on in and around the house. So they brought some of their friends along with them, including themselves, and they kind of camped down below where we were in this main area, which was basically an old log landing. And they were down below us. And but Larry, I just want to tell Larry thank you for this. At the end of our 3 or 4 days up there, Larry presented this rock to me. The way this works in native custom is that when you're gifted something like this, you can't pick up any rocks off the Macaw Beach. Larry has to pick them up and then give them to you. And this is one of those rocks. It's a piece of black jade. And he kind of gave this to me as only someone from the Macaw Reservation would do. He kind of sealed it into my hand and called it a protective stone for, you know, leaders. And it was a very super neat moment between Larry and I. Totally unexpected, beautiful gift. And these are not easy to find. As you handle them more and more, I guess they get kind of obsidian sheen to them. And you have them around you when you do things like the Estes method down at the crazy lake. So, what happened down there was, if you don't know what the Estes method is, it's where you cover your eyes and ears and kind of go deaf and blind on purpose to see if there's any kind of spirit contact around you. And so we had the players that wanted to do this. And so we sealed their eyes and ears with Simeon Hines' harmonic resonance tone, and away they went. They couldn't hear or see me. They were just sitting in the lake by this old abandoned fire pit near a strange stick structure that we found off of this old cedar grove. And so we just started to ask questions to the person that was under. And the questions were simple, just like, are we alone? Who's here with us? And, reportedly with this, if these people are in tune enough with what's happening, they can't hear you, but perhaps something can hear you and can answer through them. You see what I'm getting at? So they're kind of an open vessel, or a hollow bone, I guess is a term. And so, first of all, I asked for protection. And the other thing, too, I want to mention is we didn't allow any hard alcohol at this camp. And so anybody that was coming down to do this was pretty sober minded as far as I could tell. And that was a plus for me, because the last thing you want is trouble from the other side. So I was like, before we do this, I asked for a hedge of protection, and there's
Yeah.
nothing here that can come at us. And as soon as we started to do it, we started to hear some sounds coming down from the tree line, twig snapping and stuff like that. And so I held out my hand to see if there was something really there in the darkness. And I said, well, you can push my hand down. If you're around here or up, you just can't hurt me. And then that's when Steve was next to me and said that he saw a shadow behind me. And I said, okay, which is an uncomfortable thing. You know, if you're facing something reportedly and you have something that comes from your 6 o'clock, you're a little bit hesitant. And so I put my hand down, and then I think whatever it was had left. And we went on like that for maybe another half hour, 45 minutes, asking questions. There was no real response that I remember coming from the person that was under. And then, in order to wake them up, since they're in this kind of state, this hypnagogic state, you know, you let them know that when you're going to wake them up or alert them, if the tone is still playing and they can't hear you, you slightly touch them on the left or right hand side of the shoulder or leg. And so we did that, and then we went back to camp and kind of talked about it around the fire. And we stayed up every night. We were up till about 1 in the morning. So, you know, we had a huge bonfire, and everybody was kind of just around the bonfire in their tent and in their cars. So when you wanted to go, you know, grab a beer or go having a sandwich or, you know, tell a story, you were within earshot of other people that were camping. So if you snored, other people, it turns out there's quite a few people, including myself, that are prone to snoring, especially when you're laying down on a cot. So it was, you know, I could go on and on with the experiences that we had there. There was quite a few things that unfolded that were noteworthy, including Rich did a Dr. Melba Ketchum camera retrieval up in the mountains, found some scat and some footprints. Dr. Simeon Hine ended up teaching, he called it a mini RV session, but it was kind of, you know, a big one, really. And then I shared some Al Moon sounds around the campfire. There's nothing really like having a Bigfoot, I don't know, I didn't want to call it a conference, but a field experience actually out in the field. Like, in my opinion, we've been doing conferences all wrong. Now, granted, you got to put up with what the elements throw at you, but that's real life. Like, this is what happens when you go out in the woods. There's something that's missing, and I'm not putting down any conferences out there, but after being to enough of them, for me, I just want something different that feels like it's alive with the pulse of what we're talking about. And this is the first one that besides like Phenomicon, this is the first one that I felt like, oh my gosh, like we're going to experience it right here, right now. So everyone seemed to have a good time. We already started selling. We had tickets offered the first day for a very limited run for people that were already there. And so we're going to have another limited run. I don't know when the tickets will be up, but I know we're minus 5 tickets out of the very limited run already. So when they go up, they'll probably be gone very quickly.
Now, here's a question: Has Rich looked at the card in the camera yet? Has he?
He never found the camera.
Oh,
They
okay.
got some amazing footage on my GoPro, them trying to fetch the camera. They ended up turned around. Um, they ended up finding, you know, some pretty significant looking tracks, although it's very difficult to see a Bigfoot print when it's in the substrate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at some of the forest prints that Daryl and I went after, it's very difficult to see them unless you're there kind of looking at them.
Yeah.
I understood what Rich was saying and I understood what I was looking at on the GoPro. But no, that is going to require. We did meet somebody actually. You know, Rich talks a lot about a certain area where he had an experience. It turns out we had this after party at the Hamma Hamma Oyster Saloon. Brett, God bless him, and Mike ended up pulling it through and bringing not only themselves and their cameras, but end up bringing Ron Moorhead for the win. Out of the blue, Ron shows up at the Hamma Hamma Oyster Saloon, just as I am getting up at getting up at the stage here. You know, our hope was is that we were going to show more and more of the YouTube channel to a packed house. Like the Hamma Hamma Oyster Saloon was totally packed when I got there. And I was like, well, we're going to turn all these yuppies from Seattle into Bigfoot believers here. They're going to put their oysters and their IPAs down, and we're going to get them over here. But I was waiting for the sun to go down because we couldn't show anything because it was too damn bright out. So I kept on trying to buy time. Luckily, Ron shows up, and so I'm interviewing Ron. I get Ron up there. I get Barb up there. I get Nancy up there. Everyone's grabbing a mic. And then in the background, there's this guy from an area that Rich really knows. His name's Tim. And Tim has these pictures of Bigfoot tracks in the snow. And what it shows is it shows a Bigfoot track in the snow, probably like a 16. And in the middle, it shows a baby footprint dead center. So it
Oh,
shows this very familiar behavior of the wee ones when they're set down. They've learned the trait that they don't walk on their own generally. They're walking in the footsteps of someone ahead of them, right? And I mean that points to all sorts of behavior as
hmm.
far as being careful. So there are plans in the works here between Rich and I and this guy named Tim to go stay at the spot. So this is what happens when you show up at a live event. We had a gal named Ginny who bought a wood watcher from me. She may be on here now. She's totally new to this. We set her up with people like Barb and Dana and the whole Shoop Troop. And so now she's in it to win it. Like she was pretty apprehensive. Like, should I invest my time and tell my friends that I'm now a Bigfooter, at this stage in
Yes.
my life?
Yes.
It's just like, yes, you should. And, so now I think she's totally going to like show up to events. So anyway, some bipedal kneel may have happened there to fill in some time. We don't quite know. There may be some incriminating evidence of yours truly up there singing
Amazing.
some karaoke, but it was a good time had by all, and I'm glad we did it. And so we'll talk about the future in the future.
Well, I'm excited and I will plan my health accordingly
Please do.
next year.
Jeez, Jill. All this talk.
Sorry. Um, and you know what made it worse is the fact that I had been so gung ho about going, and then all of a sudden Brett's like, "You're sick. Mike and I are going. Oh, and we're
Right.
taking Ron Moorhead." I'm like, "What?" And
Right.
then he kept texting me like, "We're having such an amazing time," and oh, look at all these photos. I was like,
Wah wah. And he doesn't like seafood.
he's anti oyster.
Right.
He's pro
It looks like you
halibut
did
fish and
find
chips.
something to eat other than shellfish there, so I was happy about it. They had an awesome menu. Like I thought it was going to be a little bit pricey. It turns out for $20 you were eating pretty well there. I saw Rich with like raw what do you call oyster shooters in a half shell, and he ate two buckets of them. So
Well, that's Mike Ferry. That's his. He's all about the
was
oyster.
he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he was there, but like his family, they used to be oyster farmers on the Oregon
Oh,
coast. So he's
really?
it's in his
It's in his
DNA
DNA.
to
Nice.
shuck an oyster and slurp it down. So he was in his element.
That's awesome.
I was not, but oh well.
Well, yeah, it was a great time. Simeon stuck around. Simeon brought his 16-foot long trailer with him and parked it over at Nancy's. So thank you again to Nancy Fry for allowing, Simeon to, have a safe place to put his camper. And of course, he brought Astro. There were a couple new puppies on the grounds. Cooper didn't make it. Poor little Cooper, I should mention here, is in the other room with a giant blue donut around his neck. And so he just got the old clip. But it's one of the cutest little things to see is his little googly eyes going both ways with this giant blue inner tube around his neck. He couldn't look more like a Hanna-Barbera character than he does right now. So
You make him sound like Igor from Young
yes,
Frankenstein.
that is Marty Feldman. Yes.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, you guys just based on what Tobe said, make a note, buy your tickets now for next year because I have a feeling that this is an event that's going to just keep evolving and keep getting better and better, and you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, check out some of the videos we just put on Facebook on the Olympic Sasquatch page on Facebook, and you can get an idea of what we're shooting for. But the overall idea, Jill, is an immersive experience where people are not only getting some didactic field experience from people that know what they're doing, but also people didn't have to do that. Some people just took off and did their own thing, but they wanted to be in the comfort of like a place where they could camp. Like one of the gals took off um, and camped down by the lake and just was happy to do that. So she went solo. We had another guy that just ended up in the forest in a tent, and he kind of came and went. And at first I was like, well, are these guys having an okay time? Well, I'm getting messages back from, they made like lifelong friends there. And
Yay!
so doesn't necessarily, reserve judgment whether or not people are having fun. People just have their own way of having fun. And that's what I wanted, is them to just like experience it the way they wanted to experience.
Well, next year I'll be there
Yay!
and the light will
Oh,
be on.
there we go.
Just in time for Halloween.
Yeah.
Um, Perfect. Well, let's talk. Let's move forward. We do have October's a busy month. There's a lot going on, starting early tomorrow morning. And if director Brett Eichenberger could have it his way, I would be doing this live stream as we speed down I-5 down to California. Um, we are back on the road tomorrow, filming for a couple of the documentaries we have in production, grabbing a little bit extra footage that we weren't able to capture when we were up in the Sierras. Getting just a few more little shots, and then we have some interviews lined up for a Flash of Beauty 3 up in northern California and southern Oregon. So I'm really looking forward to those. Those are going to be fun. And then we're scooting on into spooky season. And one of the things that's coming up that we're really excited about is it's kind of a intimate event. It's not like one of these. It's kind of like, in a sense, Olympic Strange Days. It's a smaller audience, but not like a big conference. But
Mhm.
we're having a little get together in Baker City, Oregon, uh, October 18th through the 20th. We'll be screening both movies. We're really excited about the speakers and presenters we have lined up. We not only will you see the movies, but we're really excited to have Ashley Stinnett, who I thought I saw in the chat. We also have Angelique Benham from Legacy Discoveries, and Jeff Rohn, he was featured in A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, our first film, and he's had extensive experiences in Idaho. And I thought, we're in Baker City, we're kind of on the cusp of Idaho. That would be very relevant to people in the area looking for validation of their experiences. And there's a fourth speaker that we aren't quite ready to announce. There's been some scheduling issues, and so we're just trying to work out some details, but there is another person involved, and it's just going to be fun. And if you're looking for an experience, first off, the Geyser Grand Hotel, historical hotel. It's haunted. We've had plenty of experiences there, and they offer like ghost hunting experiences and stuff, and it's amazing. We've That's a whole other show. We'll get into the ghosts on another show, but it's absolutely beautiful and just a beautiful area. Um, but just an it's going to be an amazing time, and we're really excited. So look into it.
It's coming up.
It's coming up quick. It's coming up quick, and we've been so busy. We have not been the best promoters of it. But if like you're just talking about, like when you go to these events, how being able to interact with people kind of one on one, it's not so much sitting and hearing the presentation. It's what's said afterwards or in between, where
Hmm.
people are exchanging information kind of off the record, so to speak. There's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of opportunity for one on one interaction at this event. So I encourage you to come on out and have a good time. And after that, Yakima Bigfoot Conference, uh, another event that we've been at for the last 2 years, and this year they are giving us our own screening room. We'll be screening both documentaries throughout the day, and in between we'll be doing interviews for anyone who wants to come in and sit down and share their encounter and their experiences. We will be there, and we're just really excited to meet more people and hear more stories, because I can't tell you how many stories we hear when I'm at the booth with sweatshirts and t-shirts, like promoting, watch our movie. When people are like, I gotta tell you about this sighting I had and blah blah blah, and
Hmm.
I'm like, if only there was a camera here to document this and share it. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, I'll come back and do an interview sometime. And then we never hear from them again. But this time we'll be ready, and we can't wait. It's a great show. I think, let's see, who else is going to be there? Dr. Meldrum will be presenting. I think, oh gosh. Oh, Elaine Miles, hello, Northern Exposure. She'll be there. And we featured her in an interview on the channel earlier, and she's going to kind of do more of a deep dive into her experiences and whatnot. So
Hmm.
definitely that's worth checking out. And let's just talk about something that no one's really wanting to talk about, but Halloween's on a Thursday. Our live stream's on a Thursday. I'm
Woo.
really concerned about my costume.
Spooky.
What am I going to be?
Are you going out that night? Are you gonna go clubbing?
No, I'm doing the live stream.
No, you're gonna do it from like
Outdoor.
Burnside.
No, no. I'm going to do it from the comforts of suburban Hillsboro
Okay.
with my little psychic reading sign in the
Mm.
front door window.
Okay. So if
And
we
Brett
do
can
it,
monitor the chat as kids come up to.
if we have a Halloween podcast, then I think we all need to dress up, even the people in the audience, and we need to somehow get them on camera because I know the system can do it. But I fully expect everybody here to do something more than like a lame tinfoil hat or something like that. So full makeup, blood, whatever you got, bring it.
I'm like thinking, okay, on Amazon. I mean, here's the thing. In Cooper, I mean, have you could be
I'm just
dressed
gonna
in
wear a
Cooper
donut over my
every day for October, and I'm thinking what would be great for him is one of those lobster or crab costumes that have the dangly, like, like the little antennas and the claws coming out, because with his googly eyes
head.
and these
Googly,
claws sticking out.
googly eyes.
Or give him a cactus outfit so he has googly eyes on the cactus.
We also need to mention locally here, Ocean Shores is having a conference in November. They've been having it for years. Check that out at the Ocean Shores Casino, Longview. I put in our application to be boots on the ground in a world full of apers. There we are, standing strong, making a dollar. At the Longview vendors, Squatch Fest coming up in January. Also, stay tuned for interviews coming up for a Flash of Beauty, the podcast. We start next week with our first interviews, and those will be dropping by the end. Maybe they'll be dropping on Halloween. That might be the scariest thing
Ooh.
is listening to an interview. And then the last thing I'll say on my end is that rumor is that there will be a live podcast at a bar in Port Townsend once a month with yours truly, a historic bar on waterfront. This is where Olympic Strange Nights may come in handy. So I'll have more information on that. A place where you can actually park your butt, have a beer, and hear some crazy stories once again. That's what I,
Sounds good.
that's what I know.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't had a chance, check out Shane Land's interview and any other interview on the channel you haven't seen. And also, I'm serious. I need suggestions for my Halloween costume
Mm.
because
Not another Black Widow.
you know what? I'll tell you what. Was it a few years ago? Was it before the world shut down? But at one point I was all in and I was online on those cosplay websites like
Right.
pricing out the Black Widow costume, the one where she's in white and stuff. I was like, I'm doing it. I'm gonna do it. I didn't. Um,
No.
no, no.
When I was a kid, I went as Michael Jackson, but I'll hold back in my 50s from torturing people with my MJ costume. I even had the gloves.
Didn't your mom make the glove for
Right.
you?
Yeah, okay. I've told you the story. I just think it's incredibly tragic. Anyway, all right, so we'll figure out our costumes for folks because they want to know.
Yeah, yeah. It's got to be good. It's got to be good. Okay. It'll be a cyclops. I show up with a giant eye.
Oh my goodness.
No, I'm just kidding. Um, okay, everybody, thank you so much, and we will see you next week.
All right. See you next week. Bye, Jill.
Bye, everyone.